Okay, one of my students asked me to do a video called When Centering Fails. So this is the idea that we have these practices of self-regulation, which applies to mindfulness, yoga techniques, whatever. Centering is just one word for them. When we try and get ourselves together and we try and get all calm and zen, and actually it doesn't fucking work, okay? So the student was saying, why? First of all, why? Secondly, what do I do? Well, why? With some students, it's that they're not really practicing enough when they don't need it, so that it's difficult to apply when they do need it. I sometimes joke this is like England not practicing penalties before the World Cup in football. You need to practice things not under pressure, and then gradually with a gradient of pressure, get it in the bones, get it in the system for when something hits, something difficult really hits. So that's the first thing I'd say. Now, even students who do that, sometimes centering doesn't work. That could just be their basic kind of health and well-being at that time. You know, it's really hard. It's much harder to do these techniques if you haven't slept, if you're hungry, if you're tired, if you're not emotionally, socially resourced. So yeah, that's another aspect. Is you're sort of, there's like a base state as well as what happens on top of that. So that's another aspect we could look at here. And the third thing is what's called shadow. So I sometimes joke, you know, I was in Afghanistan and did some centering there, where, you know, we're in difficult situations, but then when I went home for the family dinner, it was much harder. I'm not the first teacher of these kind of things that said something like that. So people we have long-term relationships, there's a lot of history, there's a lot of like ingrained neuronal pathways there. So that's difficult in itself. If on top of that people are symbolic of something, so people can represent something. We have this symbolic quality as human beings. So the washing up's not just the washing up, or the guy who looks like your old school teacher, or someone who represents vulnerability, which you're denying, or fierceness. This is one I get projected on a lot. People get really triggered by me, and I'm like, well, sometimes I've done something shitty, right? But often not much, but they're really out of center. Because there's a symbolic aspect to me. I sometimes have a symbol of fierceness for people that have disowned that, for example, or clarity or whatever. Yeah. So when someone gets freaked out with you unnecessarily, this is often what's going on. So and this is why we need to do the shadow work. So just doing state management isn't enough. It can also just mean that you're not doing enough what I call process work. So in embodied work, we have form and freedom. We have state regulation, you know, form work could be martial arts, could be yoga, whatever, getting yourself together. But then we also have the flow work, where we're letting the natural process of the body happen, and that needs to happen. And that could be like shaking, or just simply going for a walk, 5 rhythms dancing, focusing work. There's lots of examples of this, but it's basically where we're following and letting the body express what it wants to happen, rather than kind of stopping it or managing it. So too much stopping and managing, we either become centering robots, or actually the ability to center is reduced. Yeah, probably more I could say, but they're my first thoughts on what to do when centering fails. Oh, so that's why centering fails, excuse me. What to do when centering fails. Enjoy it. You can go with the flow and just express and be crazy. I mean, assuming you're not seriously damaging anyone else, your life, or, you know, your income or whatever, then, you know, why not? It can be joy in expression. You know, survive would be the obvious one. Walk away is one of my top tips there. When I can't center, I just think, you know what, honey, we need to talk about this later. Yeah, I'm going to go for a walk right now. Okay. Rejuvenating yourself, going back to social support. I mean, that's when you can step away from the situation. Obviously, if you're really off center, you won't even know you need to do that. That's when it's really caught you. So yeah, die with honor is the somewhat glib answer to when you're in that situation. So yes, we can't always center, but sometimes we can even, you know, take the edge off 10%, which means that we don't say something really dumb, which is going to get us divorced or fired or whatever. So even if you can take, you know, when people say work, sometimes they're expecting like total zen and calm. Whereas actually, you know, there's a certain place I can get to where just chilling myself out a little bit to go from like raging to angry could be like, you know, keep me out of jail or keep my relationship intact or whatever. So yeah, looking at what people mean by works, I think is critical here. You might still feel those unpleasant moments. We're not, you know, spiritually bypassing with the techniques. So yeah, it's there's my first thoughts on what to do when centering fails.